Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast, aka CTP, in association with TheLibertyBeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show. Greetings, everyone. If you tuned in last week's show, I mentioned I was kind of breaking my own rules a bit. Last week was on quotations. This week, TheLibertyBeacon.com will be quotations part 2. But this show, which normally corresponds and correlates with the same week drop, the Liberty Beacon piece, will be different. This show is going to delve back. I'm calling it Newcomers. If you don't know why, you haven't been paying attention to the news. But it's about the left continuing to warp and twist and spin and use language as a deflection and a distraction. As of lately, the new Orwellian Newspeak deflection, it isn't they're illegal aliens. Oh, you can't call them that, right? Illegal immigrants? No, you're not allowed to call them that. They're not even immigrants anymore. Now, they're termed newcomers. Have you heard that out of the left lately? Illegal aliens flooding our borders are just newcomers. Well, okay, technically, by the definition of Merriam-Webster's dictionary, they weren't here before. They're here now. They are newcomers. That is, of course, a complete misrepresentation and distortion and deflection of the primary point of how they got here matters. Whether they are legal newcomers or illegal newcomers matters. Let's talk about, I joke about the State Farm commercial of late, the new one they premiered at the Super Bowl with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Neighbors. That's what I said. Neighbor. Right? If someone buys a house and moves in on one side of you, they're newcomers. They're neighbors, but they're legal neighbors. Whereas opposed to maybe on the other side, someone moved out and the house was vacant, and the newcomers, in air quotes, as you can see I'm doing in the behind-the-scenes sneak peek video via YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon, the newcomers are squatters. They are illegal neighbors. The qualifier matters. The language matters. Calling them just newcomers and trying to equate them all the same is purposeful, willful, and malice of forethought attempt to distort and distract and deny of reality or from reality. Illegal versus legal matters, but the left cannot win any argument on merits if they're dealing in reality. So they have to engage in lies, spin, twisting of language, and when they can't get away with twisting, in the case of newcomers, it's not a twist or distortion of the term. It's just a clear attempt to deflect from the whole qualification of them as an illegal newcomer, right? The action part of that sentence, or the qualifying part, I was going to say action verb, right? No, the qualifier of the term matters there. but they can't win an argument on that. So they try to take something like newcomer, legal or illegal, black and white. They're either legal or they're illegal. And they try to use newcomer as a new gray area term. If you tune in months ago, end of 2023, I think it was actually, I had on both Rick Walker of Maverick News and Miss Liz of Miss Liz Tea Times, two Canuckians, to get some Canuckian perspective, as I lovingly, jokingly call them. I used to vacation up in Canada all the time, so I love Canadians. Folks in the southern states, you may have never been to Canada, so it almost isn't a whole other country to us in Michigan, because I'm in the Detroit area. It's just a tunnel or a bridge under or over the river, and bam, there you are. So it's going to seem odd to people who have never been to Canada. A lot of the things, it's like California in a way. Canada is a precursor, as is California, to what's going on, what they intend to bring, they being liberals, or rather leftists, as there is a difference between liberals and leftists, right? We're talking the language here. I agree with Dennis Prager. There is a distinction and a difference. Brandon Strzok, Candace Owens, Tammy Bruce, Guy Benson, all kinds of actual true classical liberals can be reached. They can be open to logic and reason and moved from what the fascocrats have become, Blexit, or walk away, Blexit that Candace founded, walk away that it looks like Straka, it's pronounced Strzok, created the walkaway movement. Classical liberals that you can actually have a conversation with, and logic and reason, thought, discussions, as long as they're not a leftist. It's the leftists, the fascocrats, the leftist ideologues that engage in this warping of the language, or using Orwellian Newspeak to use words in a different way to try to influence people. And some classical liberals still keep voting fascocrats because they get caught up. They're not paying enough attention. They fall for the Orwellian Newspeak spin and deflections on the language. So newcomers, yeah, the latest joke in that whole series of use of language. And Orwell also said about English language and politics, the same thing as creation of Newspeak, how they would reword things so that they can mean something different, right? Remember Bill Clinton, it depends on what the definition of is. Well, sometimes, yeah, okay, perhaps in legal terms, in the law, sometimes that's true. But 9 times out of 10, a leftist is purposefully, willfully, and with malice aforethought trying to muddy the waters by using a term in a manner, a word, in a fashion that it was not meant to be, or like newcomers. Again, are they newcomers? Well, they weren't here before. They're here now. They are new to the country. They are newcomers, but that is a complete dodge and deflection from legal versus illegal status. So the whole Clinton speak, newspeak, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. Another example of that is spending cuts. Do you know what baseline budgeting is? That started several decades ago, and it's how they get away with, again, using twisted, warped language. Baseline budgeting was a process by which the Congress adopted a budgeting tactic that the previous year's budget would be assumed to get a 10% increase across the board. That's bull. True baseline budgeting means you start from where you left off, no assumptions, you justify your spending last year and whether it should go up or down. This ridiculous notion that we're just going to across the board throw 10% more money at things is absurd and ridiculous. But that's where now you'll hear them talk about spending cuts, and I'm putting that in air quotes for those looking behind the scenes on the video. If they're assuming a 10% increase, then they agree on, well, we're only going to increase it 6%. Whether it's justified or not, they try to call that 4% difference a spending cut. That's absurd. It's more money than they got last year. That is a spending increase. But again, so few people understand what's going on, refuse to pay attention to what's going on, refuse to learn, refuse to educate themselves, refuse to do any research for themselves, and they buy, oh, hey, the budget's being cut, when it is not. It is a spending increase, just not as large as they were going to increase it. We need spending freezes and indeed freeze the budget until we get a handle on getting these deficits down and eventually to the point where we have a budget surplus so we can start paying down this debt. Otherwise, we are going headlong, Cloward and Piven, leftists on purpose, bankrupting of America. They want the United States to go bankrupt like Reagan was able to do to the Russians, the Soviets at the time, with perestroika going on through the Cold War, bankrupt them, outspend them, so that the Soviet Empire collapsed. They want the 50 United States to collapse in on itself and no longer be the United States of America. I won't discuss Cloward and Piven too much. Just leave that for additional homework. I know, oh my goodness, I expect you to do homework, but I know this audience, most of you out there understand who Cloward and Piven were, who Saul Alinsky was, who Margaret Sanger was, and how that all relates to what the Fascocrats Party is today. But I wanted to mention that situation. If we're to get under control so this country doesn't collapse in on itself, we must freeze the budget, which means some areas, the budget stays the same within a few dollars, give or take. But Department A gets a cut, so Department B gets a raise. Department C gets a cut, so proper constitutional Department D, Defense, can indeed rearm ourselves after giving so many munitions away to Ukraine. Again, and Ukraine, whole other discussion, whole other argument. If you recall, I did the episode on elections in Ukraine. Damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Zelensky, how does one conduct a fair and honest, open, free election in an open war zone? That I elongated the title there, but you can find the show at Buzzsprout or TheLibertyBeacon.com. You can search Joseph M. Leonard in the search bar to bring up all my articles about elections. How does one conduct an election in an open war zone? Zelensky's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't try to hold the election. A fair, honest, pro and con, the good, the bad, the ugly. Like I've said many times, I present you all of it. Like Ranked Choice, episode 2, way back when. Certain hosts only tell you part of the story. I tell you the whole story. So you come here, I think you know by now, to get the whole story, or as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story. But we've got to get that spending under control. If you recall the Norton v. Shelby episode regarding the case that indeed dealt with government overreach and these deep state agencies being unconstitutional and constantly expanding, we need to start shrinking agencies and putting the money towards where it needs to be, but more so really cutting into that deficit, these budget deficits, and getting to a surplus so we can start paying down our debt. Because, again, spending cuts. If you plan on spending $20 at the steakhouse, but you get a hamburger and only spend $10 instead, did you cut $10 from your dinner budget? Not really. You still spent $10 out of your pocket, $10 less in your wallet. It isn't like $10 extra went into your wallet. It wasn't there to be, it came from there to begin with. So if you spend 10 or 20, it is still still spending and expenditure. Accounting, that's why they don't teach economics. You have to look at both sides of the ledger, debits and credits, income and expenditures. And while it is good to spend $10 at the steakhouse on the burger rather than the $20, you're indeed reducing your budget for real there if you were going out to eat anyway. But that is different than how the government does the automatic assumption of 10% increase every year and pretending a 5% increase is a cut. That's not a cut. The language matters, and we're losing it. We on the right have to be more diligent in the use of our words, our terms, and calling this out. That's also the point of cultural Marxism and the whole ProuNouns thing. It isn't all about tolerance and acceptance. This is about the left wanting a distraction, a distortion, a deflection, perversion of America, getting people hung up on pronouns and supposed gender fluidity to distract from Bidenomics, to distract from the Biden crime family having sold us out to Russia and China. If they get you arguing about pronouns, the cultural Marxists win. You can't fall for that. It is a distraction, and it is about undermining America, part of the cultural Marxist plan to undermine Western values. And the pronoun battle is about destroying the family structure. Another part of the Alinsky and Cloward and Piven style plan to undermine America, to pull us down, drag us down. We've talked in the past about the political spectrum. And last week I mentioned blackline Marxists and Antifa using the anarchist symbol. Well, on the right side of the spectrum is anarchy. They may use the anarchy symbol, but they're not anarchists. It's a black flag. It is a false flag. It is a lie, a distortion, a spin, because anarchists are about no government, every man, woman, and child for themselves, and no one I know is for complete anarchy. But they use that Russian-derived symbol to identify with Russian communism of today, not the anarchism of back when. So they co-opt that symbol like they co-opt the language, co-opt so many things, and distort it from all context of reality, because on the left side of the political spectrum, you have total and complete government control, which is what BLM and Antifa and fascocrats are about. They want pure leftist, pure federal, top-down, tyrannical control of everything in America. So we have to beware of their Alinsky deflection and distortion tactics and be careful with our words. Now, you've heard me use the word fascocrats.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bondarenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on Wham Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
Most people call Democrats communists or socialists. And like I've said in other episodes, as if there's a hill of beans of difference in any of the three. Communism, as Ayn Rand once said, is about enslaving people by force. Fascism is a little more subtle, but the same goal, the same means and ends, as Ayn Rand said, of total power. But fascism, as also Reagan spoke about to Dan Rather in an interview back in the 70s, I think it was, before he became president, if fascism ever comes to America, it will come in the form of liberalism, as we discussed in last week's Quotations episode. And it's just that. It is now coming here. It has come here. Fascism, as Reagan rightly said, and I talk about all the time, it's the same as communism and socialism. It's complete control, but it's through deep state, unelected bureaucrats, top-down tyranny, federal tyranny, regulation. What is the difference between Xi in China and China, the CCP, literally owning the companies and having their people on the boards, serving the will of the state, versus fascism, which the supposed private corporate boards, or even your small business, must succumb and follow the fascist state dictate via regulation? How is there really any difference there, is my point. There isn't much of a difference there. So I call them fascocrats, and that's not hyperbolic. I have an article I wrote decades ago about how the left engages in psychological projection. They call everybody a Nazi because they are the fascists. It's projection. Oh, I can't pronounce things correctly today. I'm getting tongue-tied. I apologize. But as I've said, this is me. This is raw. This is uncut. You get the show, blemishes and all. I'm just a normal person like you. That's why I hope you tune into the show. We're just normal people trying to work through reality, whereas the left keeps trying to distort and deflect from reality. And I lost my train of thought. Well, how's that for raw and honest? But fascist dictates, again, not hyperbolic. Oh, thank you, Lord, for the reminder. The train got back on the tracks. Fascocrats. Some call them commies, some call them socialists. Now, remember, the Nazi Socies, they were socialists, later known as fascists. So socialism and fascism is synonymous, even was back then. Communism, just slightly different banner, the same means justify the ends of total control. But fascocrats is not hyperbolic, literally. You can go online, don't use Google, go to DuckDuckGo or Jibberoo or FreeSpoke that doesn't suppress results and try to send you to liberal leftist think pieces rather than fact-based articles. Literally bring up the Communist Manifesto, the Nazi National Socialist Deutschland Arbeiter Party, Nazi platform, and today's Democrat platform. 28 planks of the NSDAP are in the Democrat Party platform today. As Reagan said, going back to quotations from last week, trust but verify. Don't take my word for anything. I don't want you to just tune in and soak in everything I say and just accept it. Do your own research. And that's what I'm saying. Bring up the Communist Manifesto, the Nazi Socialist platform, today's Democrat platform. You will see they are pretty much one and the same. There is no difference in any of them. But that's why I call them fascocrats, literally the 28 planks from the Nazi Socialist platform. Bring up the Magna Carta and our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and the Republican platform, which is not to say Republicans are perfect. Far from it. You hear me talk about CINOs and rhinos selling out to fascocrats all the time. I'm talking about the Republican platform and those of us like me who are ChristiTutionalists, Christian-based U.S. constitutionalists. The GOP platform is in line with all of that for those who adhere to it. And we need to do a better job at making sure we're involved in the primaries. If you wait till the general election, too late. Don't whine to me about, oh, these candidates suck. What were you doing primary time? Were you helping a good candidate get on the primary ballot and get them to be our general election candidate, or did you let all the rhinos and the CINOs give us another John McLean or a Mitt Romney as a nominee and having to hold our nose because, yes, they're better than the fascocrats, but we needed somebody a whole lot better than that. We needed another Reagan. We need another Trump like now. And as you should recall, the Reagan episode from a few weeks back, the lessons of Reagan Democrats. If you haven't seen that or heard that episode or read that article on TheLibertyBeacon.com, I highly recommend you go back and look at that. We need the very unique person for our times now. Doesn't mean you're going to like everything about them. No one is perfect. We are all human. We are all frail. We all have faults. But I'm not voting for Pope, which don't get me started on the nincompoop, as I coined Francis. As I'm a real Catholic, I say the nincompoop, Francis, is more interested in communism a lot of the time now than Catholicism. He actually spoke out about genderism the other day. It's like, wow, you decided to act like a real pope for a change? That was kind of a surprise. But yeah, you've got to be involved in the primary to get us good candidates. But the platforms are night and day. And it's we, the people, the uniparty garbage that I've talked about before. It's not the uniparty. CINOs, rhinos, and fascocrats all comprise the deep state. The Republican Party is what you willing to get off your butt and be involved to help make it. If it's only Democrat light, guess whose fault that is? Yours for letting rhinos get away from the platform and just being Democrat-like. So again, that's where language matters. It isn't the uniparty. Those undermining America are all part of the ruling elite, establishment, deep state class. It is up to us to make sure the Republican Party sticks to its platform and tries to restore our American republic, as you've heard me say before and jokingly say, roar. No, not the Katy Perry music video. Restore our American public. But it's up to us to be involved. And language, to conclude the show, back where we started, language matters. Uniparty versus deep state. That language matters. And using uniparty is a convenient excuse of the lazy who are unwilling to bother to get off their couch and help fight to save our nation, to restore our American republic, or MAGA, Make America Great Again, which, just a quick aside on that, isn't it funny how MAGA is supposedly racist now, but when Bill Clinton and Al Gore stole that original phrase from Ronald Reagan, as I discussed in the Reagan piece, comparing Reagan and Trump, the similarities and the differences and the lessons of the Reagan Democrats. When Bill Clinton and Al Gore used it on buttons with the Confederate flag, that wasn't racist. I mean, if the slogan was ever racist, it was when they used it in conjunction with the Confederate flag. We don't use it in conjunction with the Confederate flag today. At any rate, again, I'm kind of now off the beaten path and off topic. So let me just bring it back to conclude. We on the right have to be careful with language. Thank you for tuning in. And again, TheLibertyBeacon.com this week has Quotations Part 2. The CTP show is different, not corresponding and correlating directly like it usually does. This episode corresponds and correlates with older leftist twisting and warping of language articles, which will, of course, the links will be in the show notes. So please check those out for ability to go further down the rabbit hole of the Orwellian Newspeak. 1984 was meant to be a warning, and the left in this nation, not just in Canada, in all Western cultures, with cultural Marxism invading in, have seen it as a playbook rather than a warning. So we need to know the difference, and we need to educate others on what is going on, the reality versus the delusion via the spin and the newspeak that the left tries to peddle. And again, classical liberals, you need to wake up. A lot of you have been fooled for a long, long time by all this deflection and distraction and distortions and twisting and warping of language. Things are different than they were just 20 years ago, certainly let alone 61 years ago when I was born. It's time to wake up, smell the coffee, smell the roses, whatever phrase you prefer, and really dig down deep into what's going on. One last thing on language, bills. The U.S. Senate bill, they called it a Border Security Act. It wasn't. The U.S. House passed H.R. 2 last year. That was a real border security increase bill. The Senate bill, Mitch McConnell, Rhino sellout, tried to shove down our throats, was an amnesty bill and a money laundering bill. It allocated more money, not for border patrol, not for deportations, not for courts, but to the Department of Homeland Security, who literally had the authority, if this were to pass and become law, to hand out green cards at the border, bypass the immigration courts, because 99.9% of these people do not qualify for amnesty, and they know it. That's why they don't show up for their court hearing. And the left knows it. That's why they wanted this bill to literally be able to hand out green cards at the border. Immediately declare okay, we're giving you amnesty, here's a green card. That's what it was about. And most of that money went to NGOs, non-governmental organizations, like, unfortunately, the Red Cross, like, unfortunately, I said I'm a Catholic, a lot of Catholic organizations that have been infiltrated by Marxists like the nincompoop, and this notion of open borders, them getting money, profiting off of the cartels trafficking people to the United States. More money from our government to nonprofit organizations to really profit. They're not nonprofits. They're not really charities. They're trafficking organizations, and they're making money, and they would have made more money to help people settle in America under that amnesty bill. But we see that all the time with legislation. They'll call it one thing that is the exact opposite of what the bill will do, to sell it to stupid people who don't pay attention. I know you're not stupid. That's why you're tuned in here. And that's why you need to like, share, subscribe. More importantly, right? Share it with others. Share it with those classical liberals that you know might be able to be red-pilled. There are some out there that we can red pill if we're thinking and strategic about it. Going on and on about chemtrails and 5G and whatever. It doesn't matter. As I've said in that Red Pill article, it doesn't matter what you know to be true. It matters what you can convince others is true. There is the difference between conspiracies, if you will, right? There is conspiracy fact. That's why the RICO laws exist. There are actual people who do conspire, but it isn't always a back room like Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, and the volcano lair where they're conspiring in a room together to do certain things. Sometimes evil just thinks alike. So they do things based on their like interests. It isn't necessarily always conspiracy. So we have to be careful and deal in those conspiracy facts, the conspiracy reality that can be presented to red pill classical liberals to reality from the delusion the left is trying to keep them under the boot of. I've rambled enough. I kind of changed course a few times, kept coming back to, though, language. Language matters. What you say to people matters, and how you say it matters, and the things you choose to talk about matters. Again, you can be right all day long on X, Y, and Z, but if all you're ever going to get from people are them rolling their eyes at you and walking away, it's worthless to bother to spew your words because you're doing nothing. You're accomplishing nothing. Language matter, words matter, our choice of topics matter. So please get out there. We are in the death throes of the dying of the light. Rage against the dying of the light. We need to restore our American Republic, and it's up to you to share this show and talk to other people about what's going on. Because as Reagan said, going back to quotations from last week, this is the last place on earth. There's nowhere else to go to. If we lose freedom here, it's gone for the entire planet forever. Thank you all. Take care. God bless. Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available strikes coming soon to a city near you, available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at TheLibertyBeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast and share episodes. We need your help to grow the show. Just wanted to give a brief shout out and thank you to all the folks on iHeartRadio and Player FM for being 2 in the top 3 platforms that my show, ChristiTutionalist Politics, is most often listened to. So thank you all. Take care. God bless.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.